Welcome to episode 167 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast, and I'm happy to have back today, Friday, September 15th, to preview Rutgers Virginia Tech, David Anderson, back from having his second child. Congratulations, and I know it's been a whirlwind. Appreciate you fitting in some time to talk to us about Rutgers football once again.
You're welcome, and it's definitely something to keep your mind on other than changing poopy diapers and giving bottles. So,
Good point. I've been there. And so, haven't talked to you since before the first game. What are your initial thoughts on this Rutgers team through two games so far?
well, echo one of your sentiments, which is just the professionalism and organization that the offense seems to have. And I mean, we look back at the Chris Ash era, and we're seeing timeouts that have to be called on right after the opening kickoff because they're not ready. The offense after a touchback, when you know you're going to be at the 20-25 yard line, like what could possibly not be ready, and things like that. It's actually been the reverse. Rutgers has been catching opponents on things like that, too many men on the field, improper substitutions, or just even if it's not just the matchup overall being bad. Um, all those sorts of things have been impressive so far. Defensively, they're just playing with a different speed. Like they're just playing so much faster than we've seen the last 3 years. Um, Pretty much the fastest I've seen them since that 2015 Michigan State game when they almost upset the number 4 team in the country.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, just a lot of these things that we're saying have to be X factors have so far turned up right for Rutgers. So we'll get into a lot more of them specifically over the course of the next few minutes. But like Jaquay Jackson showing separation, which is adding a dimension to the offense. The offensive line confusing defenses on run blocking schemes that then allow them to have more time to throw the ball. Defensively, just being able to get pressure with four, having deep defensive end room so that they don't get worn out. And then the safeties, we were just wanting to make sure that they didn't have problems in coverage. And so far, that has not been a problem at all. So all of those things have come up, head so far. Well, we'll see how they do this weekend against Virginia Tech. But I think it's gone as good as it could have gone so far.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, for sure, and that's why I think this weekend's so intriguing because even though listen, Virginia Tech they're not a top 25 team. They're still a Power Five team, and they're a team that I think should be improved this year. Obviously, they have some injury issues, but I think it's probably the best team that Rutgers has faced so far. So that's why I think it's important to see how they do. Touching off on that part, what do you think? What jumps out at you in terms of one of the biggest keys in this game?
Yeah, the biggest key to me for the Rutgers offense is you have to punish Virginia Tech's defensive line when they're going to either rush way to the outside or do a lot of twists and slants and things on the interior, because this is basically what we saw from Rutgers a lot, especially 2 years ago in the 2021 season, where they could get pressure, but they required the defensive linemen to do a lot of crossing or going outside, just confusing the offensive line. But when they do that, you have a moment where if your run calls are on time, there's a moment there where these guys are crossing, and you can almost block one guy with two, and it can open up lanes as they're kind of running away from maybe where the hole might be. Or if they're slanting, right? Sometimes you're going to call plays that just go right into the slant. There's nothing you can. That's what Rutgers has done as well. But if you catch them going the wrong direction, you have to punish them with a big play. And so
Hmm.
that's what immediately jumps out at me on that side of the ball, because if Virginia Tech can get pressure with their defensive front, then that allows their linebackers to play more coverage and cover up what I do not think is a very great group of safeties. And I believe their best safety is actually listed as out or doubtful for the game. So I have not been impressed with Virginia Tech safeties. Now, again, Purdue's a good passing offense, but they are a much better off if they can keep their linebackers back in coverage. And then the other thing with that is that their linebackers and safeties. The Virginia Tech coach admitted that they've had poor what they call run fits, where they were not filling lanes very well, and they got destroyed by Purdue on a lot of like outside runs. And so if you have them on the move, they're linebackers, and they can't just read and react, and they're all over the place. That's going to bode well for Rutgers in the run game, and then inversely in the pass game.
Yeah, it's the safeties Nasir Peoples. He missed last week, and then he did not practice on Wednesday. And Brent Pry listed him or told the media he was pretty much doubtful at that point. So borderline doubtful is what he said. So it would be a surprise if he played, and he is a key player for them. So I agree with you. I think this is a huge test for the Rutgers offensive line. Obviously, there's some, they've rotated so many guys. They played 11 guys against Temple. Tyler Needham, starting right tackle, is, very likely out of this game. What do you think in terms of how big of a test do you think it is for this offensive line? And speaking to those points you just did, what do they need to do to be able to have a successful game for the offense?
Right. So it's two things. One is you have to make sure that you get your hands on a guy, because if you don't get at least slow them down, then their timing is going to be quick. Like when you play on the defensive line and you're doing what we call twist or a cross or a stunt, right? Just we used to call it like an ego. If the end goes inside and then the tackle goes out, whatever that is, it's all about timing. So if you can disrupt the timing, the guys might be bumping into each other or they're just slower to the ball, and you have moments where they're not looking in the backfield. There's just general confusion. And so you have to make sure you disrupt that timing by getting that quick pop. And this is one of the things we talked about with Coach Flaherty that's different, and Shiraka really different than the scheme a year ago. Is that's the idea, is you always get your hands on somebody. You're not just kind of building a wall and waiting for them to come to you on running and passing down. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the first thing. And then the second thing is they're going to have to just really take advantage of, if they can get a chip block and get to the second level to kind of seal off the Virginia Tech's linebackers. Like they have shown terrible pursuit angles. I think they got a little bit better at the end of the game against Purdue last week. But if these guys are having to decide if they're going in, if they're going out, and there's a blocker in between, then that's going to be problematic. So you got to get a hit quick. And if it's not your man, you got to get to the second level on a running play to open that up. On passing downs, I mean, really use their momentum against them. If a guy's going to run way outside, just kind of keep pushing him outside, and you got to rely on your quarterback to step up or have good pocket presence, which Wimsatt has shown so far this year, much more than any of us could have expected.
Yeah, and that's going to be key because Virginia Tech's actually top 20 in the country in sack rate right now in terms of getting to the quarterback and pressures and all that. So I'm really interested to see how they do. And in terms of who steps up for Needham, but how the tackles hold up in this game. Obviously, Holland Pierce, I think he has struggled a little bit on that left side, and this is a game they definitely need him to kind of step up.
Well, that's the thing, right? They're going to say that he's a big guy. They're going to just try to run around him. So when you're that big, you have to use your length, and the quarterback has to know, okay, Holland Pierce is not going to be quick enough to stop a guy just doing a speed rush on a wide nine all the way around the side. You just have to accept that that's going to happen, and kind of kick that guy out and use that as a running lane either for Wimsatt or a running back to then just take advantage of that vacated space. We talk
Mhm.
about vacated space a lot in the pass game, that if a blitzer comes, then the quarterback is generally taught, okay, that's probably going to be open because that space is being vacated. It's the same thing here, but in the running game, is that if they're going to go around the outside, then you got to use their momentum against them, right? Just let them go. You got to just let them go outside, as long as they don't get all the way around you and you get a hand on them. Then that's going to open up running lanes or ability to have good pocket presence. I mean, Pierce is so big that this is going to happen. But you've seen plenty of big tackles, like the best one in the NFL would be Jonathan Ogden. He never got beat outside, and it's not like he was fast. He wasn't quick. It's just that he was big. He knew how to use his length, and the quarterbacks knew, okay, he'll keep the guy outside, but then I got to be ready for him to maybe circle back behind me, but I have to step up into that space. So there's a lot of things with that. Again, I think Pierce, he played the way I thought he would play last week. I think people's expectations were just actually too high of
Mhm.
him after last year.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's a really good point in terms of opening up running lanes. I wanted to ask on the flip side, obviously the quarterback situation, it sounds like Kyron Drones, the Baylor transfer, is going to get the start, or if not, should play prominently. Grant Wells, the starter, is pretty banged up, didn't fully practice, at least what the media saw this week. And, he's even been a little inconsistent. Obviously, as Rutgers fans, we worry about a dual threat quarterback from over the years. Any thoughts in terms of how that maybe changes the approach of the defense or not?
Well, it would be interesting to see what they call if they go with drones as their quarterback, because with Wells, it's very obvious. Like one of the things we've talked about for years is that Rutgers offense will have success when they have a bread and butter. Because if there's a play that you can go to, then you build everything on top of that. Even, I mean, this is the whole principle of the old Vince Lombardi Packer sweep. You need a play that you can go to. Now, for them, it's supposed to be that slant. And the problem is that defenses, even in Old Dominion, they figured out that against Wells, like cheat the slant route and
Hmm.
like make him go over you. So basically, they rely on being able to complete that slant route so that then they can do double moves or they can run other action against it to kind of trick the defense that this is not what's coming. But once Purdue locked that down, they had very little success with that slant pattern. Now, will they throw that same route with drones? My guess would be no, because he's got a strong arm. But much like we saw earlier with Wimsett in his career, like he doesn't have the accuracy to throw that perfectly on time from what we've seen so far.
Hmm.
So, and if he did, starting, in my opinion, because that's what their offense is, right? So, what are they going to do with him? Well, probably what we saw from him do on the last drive in the last game, which is he's going to be a threat as a runner. Um, one of the things that Wells does terribly, and I heard someone commenting about this. It might have been it was definitely one of the other podcasts. I don't want to credit wrong or rightfully who it was, but that his decision making on the QB option or like read options, Wells is not good. So those plays are in the playbook, and if drones can simply make better decisions about who he's reading, they're going to run for more than like 11 yards like they did last week. That's just a reality. I mean, I know Rutgers defense is very stout against the run, but this guy has an added dimension as a runner. And he has a strong arm. So when plays break down and he scrambles to the side, he does exactly what you see Wimsett do, which is if the receiver can recognize it, break off their route, and maybe run to the sideline, he's got enough of an arm to throw it to that guy. So you have to be ready for these off schedule plays, and you have to be ready for a little bit more. I agree with you. I'm a little bit more concerned with him because we don't have the book on him. We have a full book on Wells.
Yeah.
We know what he does well. We know what he doesn't do well. No pun intended. And I just, if he plays, it would be hard for me to see this Rutgers defense having a tough day unless they're just put in very short fields because of turnovers or special teams or something like that.
Yeah, great points. It's funny how, there are a lot of similarities between these two teams. It just seems on paper and, with results and performance that Rutgers is the better version of the two. But obviously, a big part of their two games was jumping out to early leads. What have you thought about the play calling early on in games? And, I guess, how interesting would it be, or how different do you think it might be if they do fall behind in this game in terms of the approach from Shiraka?
It's hard to say because what we've seen so far, like you said, is in 2 games, they were ahead of the game. When I've watched most of the Straka film, even at Minnesota, they tended to be out to an early lead, even though they're leaning heavily on the run game. I think he's done a great job, and this is where when he was first hired, I didn't like it. But the more I thought about it and the more I watched film, is exactly what we've seen, which is he is not afraid to throw on first down. But the
Mhm.
difference between him and the Gleason offense, which also was really important for them to throw on first down, is that you have no idea what's coming. It could be coming to a tight end, it could be a running back pass, it could be just a simple out route, and that's what we've seen Rutgers have a lot of success on. Is if the DBs are off, just run that simple out. Wimsett has the arm strength that he can hit that pass, whereas even a Noah Vedral, you're afraid that's going the other direction for a pick six if he's trying to throw that simple out route because it takes a little extra velocity. So I've been very impressed by that. In terms of the run game, I I think it has been built on the success of the threat of the pass. When we've seen Rutgers get into these ruts where they're just running it into the line, like we saw in the third quarter against Temple, their running game was not effective.
Mhm.
And so I think that Virginia Tech is much tougher, especially at defensive tackle, than Northwestern, which was very weak at that spot. So I don't think they're going to be able to just win against Virginia Tech by running it up the gut. That's not going to work. They're going to have to throw on first and second down and make a few plays. You can't be afraid to make mistakes there. I've been very pleased, especially early in the game, that they've been mixing it up because Northwestern had no idea what was coming. And that's a team that plays against Minnesota every year. And they faced Soraka many times, but they had no idea what was coming. And I feel like that is something we haven't seen from Rutgers offense in a long time. So I've been very pleased in terms of answering your question there. If Rutgers falls behind, the question then is how much does the defense drop back? If they drop into a cover two and Rutgers is running into 7-man box, I feel pretty good about that because we saw what Monungai did against Michigan State last year when they
Yep.
were basically like, okay, here's a 7-man box. And it's like, okay, we'll take that all day. You beat one man, especially because Virginia Tech, like we said, has had poor pursuit angles from their linebackers, which means, okay, it's a 3-yard run if everyone just blocks who they're supposed to block. And if the linebacker takes a bad angle or the safety, it's a 15-yard run. So if they do that, then we're going to have to see what we saw last week, which is Jaquay Jackson being like, okay, I'm just going downtown, and Wimsatt having to make them respect that. If it doesn't work, where does Rutgers go from there? I don't know. That's the big question. Is it going to be a tight end route down the seam that we haven't seen? Is someone else going to be able to catch a deep pass? I don't know. Do we need to rely on wheel route action from running backs? How are they going to stretch the defense if they fall behind? So that they open up this space underneath for, this running lanes so that you're not forced into just dropping back and passing. Because if Rutgers has to do that, they're not going to do well.
Agreed. Yeah, great points. And hopefully we don't fully find out that answer this week. And
Hopefully we don't have to find out. Right.
the
Exactly.
script goes as it has been. So what are your thoughts on the running back rotation? Sam Brown back. We're still not sure. How many reps he might get this weekend. Obviously, Monungai's been off to a great start. Jashawn Benjamin's been really good. We don't know if Aaron Young's gonna be back or not. I guess what are your thoughts? For this week, but just long term. Assuming Brown, is back and working his way into the regular rotation. I kind of feel like there might be just a straight platoon with Monungai and Brown now, and it benefits Brown not having to be that 25 to 30 carry back every game. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it was a fair point that he needed to get a little bit of the rust off. You saw how he improved over the course of the Temple, and I know Temple was getting more tired as his carries were happening,
Yeah,
but I mean, you want to see that. One thing that concerns me, well, let me say it this way. I don't think you can really go into a game with more than 3 running backs that are a part of your game plan. I think that's not really doable because then they're getting too many different guys or whatever. So if Benjamin's the one who's going to be kind of maybe your change of pace back, because
hmm
Monungai and Brown, neither one of them's really a quote change of pace back. They're
right.
both more like hard
Workhorse.
runners.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's why a straight platoon might be a good idea. I think both of them get better as the game goes along.
yep,
So if you can keep them a hair fresher, it's probably a good idea. Neither of them is really going to scare their opponent that much as a receiver. I mean, Brown had that one nice catch that went down to like the 1 yard line, but that's not really his bread and butter. He's a good athlete and he doesn't have bad hands, but he's much more comfortable if you get hand him the ball than if you're throwing these like swing passes. I
sure.
think that it could be a straight platoon, or in an ideal world, you do what Jerry Kill did in that 2017 season, where it's like, okay, these are the plays we like to run with Robert Martin. These are the plays we like to run with Josh Hicks. These are the type of plays we like to run with Raheem Blackshear. And then whatever is working, it's not even that you go to the hot hand as a running back. You go to the hot hand when it comes to the play call,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I would probably do. I mean, if we have to see Salam in this game, then that probably means something went horribly wrong. Not that I don't like him. It's just I think it's really hard to get more than 3 guys ready at the running back position. I would also shy away from overloading Brown now for 2 reasons. One, Monunga's been playing well, and
Yeah,
two, you got to ease him into action. Like you can't just start dumping 30 carries on unless you are desperate and you're like, there's no way we're winning this game unless we
yeah,
just give it to him every time, which I don't see that scenario. Then you got to maybe 15 carries max. I mean, what he carried what 6 times last game? Like you got to
yeah,
not too many. Monunga's
yeah.
playing well. The team is rallying around him. You got to go with him as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I like the idea of Benjamin as a change of pace back with those two as the workhorses. I mean, Monungai, he's added muscle, he's added weight, and you can see that he's dishing out some physical punishment on guys trying to tackle him in a way that I feel like he wasn't able to do as much last year. The thing I liked about the Brown catch was that when you saw him go down the sideline, you saw that glide in his run.
Right,
And you could
exactly.
see him that, that just pure, just ability to run in a way that you can't teach. He still has it. And to see that on his first game back, I thought was super encouraging, but completely agree. I mean, I really don't think he should get more than 15 carries,
Touches
probably
even,
10
yeah.
to 12. But I think that he could get, maybe a couple touches in the pass game, because I do think that they've used that as a safety valve compared to the tight ends, which, we talked at length in the preseason thinking that that was going to be a big focus. And, Langan had 4 catches in the opener, but tight ends didn't have anything in the first 2 games. And one thing that surprised me the most is that Sean Bowman hasn't been used as a pass threat at all.
I mean, the guy is huge. Like, you can see why they're using him as basically a sixth lineman, like they did with Giovanni Haskins.
Yeah.
I think this is something that's in the playbook, but their focus right now. I mean, one of the things that is hard to explain to people who just play Madden, right? When you play Madden or in the old days NCAA football, every play was available to you at all times. That's not really how a real game is. You have plays that you're like, we are definitely going to call this play in this game, possibly multiple times. And then you have plays that you're like, okay, these are plays we call every game, but we didn't particularly focus on them. And then you have plays that you don't have time to practice them in the game plan in college. In the NFL, it's a little different. Like they should be able to, but in college, you don't expect that. So I think that the tight end thing is something we'll maybe see as the season goes on. I think it's smart. I mean, I just think Shiraka has a plan, like like the beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. And I mean, I'm not saying he's Bill Belichick, but it's basically like Bill Belichick has 4 game plans that he goes to, and those are basically the template for every other game plan. And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Shiraka has that, and we've basically seen the same template in game 1 and game 2. So does he
Yep.
go to a different template for this game plan, or does he just do the same that we've been doing, but maybe with a few wrinkles? I think that we'll see tight ends. With Wimsatt, you have to get him good at something, and right
Yeah.
now that something is running back wheel routes and those just out route from receivers. Like that is what we've seen him do, and
Yeah.
then we should see him expand. But you don't want to just tell him he's got to do every single play in the playbook right away. That's not how you ease in a younger quarterback.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll see it, but the running back wheel routes also is probably a big factor this game because again, if you have bad pursuit angles as a linebacker or a safety, it's even harder to stop a running back who's running full speed. Like that is pretty much the hardest thing to do as a defensive player because you're running in opposite direction. I mean, think of anyone who, for example, plays soccer, right? But the difference is the person's not dribbling the ball with their foot; they're just carrying it. So how
Mm-hmm.
hard is it to stop somebody full speed doing that, or even in basketball on a fast break? If you're just standing underneath the hoop and you got 2 guys running right at you, what are you going to do? It's really hard to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, those are great points. I think just in terms of Wimsatt, he's been a lot more accurate inside 10 yards. He's still struggled outside of 10 yards, but like you said, the throws he has completed that have been 10 plus yards are throws that, and you said this to me offline, that we really haven't had anyone that can make those throws. And to your earlier point in the Temple game, after they did nothing in the third quarter, that drive where Monungai went down and just took over, it was that first pass to Jackson
Exactly.
on the outside that changed everything. And then boom, Monungai just took it from there. 6 carries, I think 56 yards or whatever it was. But
Yeah,
it's amazing how much that opened things up.
for sure. I mean, when we talk about it, right, Gary Nova, why do we keep I mean, Gary Nova was a good college quarterback at his best, but he could throw that fly route to Carew anytime. I mean, we saw them basically save the game against Temple in 2013 with that. We saw them start the season in 2014 against Washington State with that pass. He did it against Arkansas, which then
Mm-hmm.
allowed everything else to open up underneath. It's like if you can threaten the defense vertically like that, then the safety has to start cheating because they know that if the cornerback's burned, okay, either you just say, okay, we're okay surrendering a touchdown, or you say, all right, the safety's going to have to start cheating over and respect that, which opens lanes up underneath. And so, all of that being said, I mean, that's where Jackson, the key from a receiver standpoint is he's not getting jammed. And that's the same thing with Carew. Rutgers hasn't had a receiver since him that if they try to jam him at the line with press coverage, he can just whack the guy's arm and run around him. Like we have not seen that from a Rutgers receiver. Not many. I mean, basically him, even maybe Sanu a little bit, but this is, I mean, I've been on the Jackson hype train for a long time, even if maybe his hands are not as good as we thought, but his ability to just get away from people is pretty good. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely done some of the little things a lot better than I thought. Going back to your point about Nova, I had flashbacks in my head because I was at the 2014 Michigan game. Do you remember that bomb he threw? And do you remember who he threw it to? This is a name that I honestly just had to look up because I couldn't remember.
I believe in that game the touchdowns were caught by Andrew Terzilli had two,
That was
and
it.
maybe
That was,
John Simmons had one. And the
uh,
bomb went the second half, right? It was the beginning of the third quarter, and it was
yeah.
to
Oh no, it was
Terzilli
midway third quarter. Yeah, it was.
midway third quarter.
Yeah, it was Simmons and Terzilli each had a touchdown, but it was an 80-yard bomb. Terzilli was the first play of the drive, and he ran right at me, and I remember I could still see it. So when you brought that up, I was I had to look it up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Even it wasn't Carew, but he could throw. They had to respect the deep ball enough. I
Right?
mean, they only had Terzilli for 1 year because he was a transfer from Kansas. I think he's from Kinnelon.
Yeah, he's New
Um,
Jersey, definitely.
so just the threat of that is the thing. So then the question is, when they play other teams, are they just going to say, "Okay, go ahead, I dare you to beat us deep," like kind of like Rutgers did against Michigan State 2 years ago, and it did not go well. Like,
Yeah,
like maybe because that was what they were trying to do to stop Kenneth Walker, so they're like, "All right, we'll allow you to throw it to Jalen Naylor or whatever." We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I feel like what is going to happen if this offense hits some, adversity? I don't
yep,
know. Because not only from a player standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, I think Shiraka is not going to have Shiano like telling him what to do, like maybe a younger coordinator might. Like he's
hmm
going to be like, no, this is what we have to do. End of story. But do they get a little tense with the play calling? Are they scared to throw over the middle because they're afraid of interceptions? I don't know. I mean, Virginia Tech, they have athletic guys. I mean, even if their pursuit angles have been bad, they have athletic linebackers and they have athletic safeties. It's just that you can tell they're still learning how to be basically good at football in a
yeah,
sense. The way I guess I know we kind of run a little long on time here, but from my standpoint, Virginia Tech is the bottom of what a Power Five team should be. Right? They can throw the ball a little bit. If they're paying throw the ball, they can run the ball a little bit as long as they are calling good plays, which they haven't been. I think they're going to change up what they're calling. And then defensively, they've got some athletes there that if they can keep them in the game, cornerbacks are pretty athletic. Defensive line can get pressure a little bit. Their coaching staff made good in-game adjustments. I know they had like 10 hours to make adjustments last week because the game went that. And then offensively, they got a running back who's from New Jersey who I really, really like. Number 33. His name's escaping me at the moment. It's been a long week, but I really like him. And so give them an opportunity to just kind of hand him the ball or throw the ball to him on short passes with QB option runs maybe mixed in. Like that, this game could get tight. And they're a good enough team that they'll be able to beat some Power Five teams, even if they're not one of the better ones this year. Kind of like I said to you offline, is like they're what we thought Rutgers was in 2018 and 2019 in
yeah.
terms of like their minimum across the board is their floor is kind of high. It's just that their ceiling, they're nowhere close to it. And so like I think this Virginia Tech team would mop the floor with the 2018 or 2019 Rutgers teams. But we're a long way from that right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams would wipe the floor with that team respectfully, but it's a fair point, for sure. And I agree with you. And I think Brent Pry is a really good coach. Obviously, he's that defensive coordinator at Penn State for a long time. But I just in watching him this week, I like his way, and I think he comes across like he knows what he's doing.
Well, the biggest thing that I took away from his press conference, which I think I watched twice, or maybe I watched once and then I watched the breakdown from one of the Hokies beat writers, is he said when they were asking him about Shiano, he knows what you have to do at Rutgers, which indicates to me that he's not like he recognizes this is a different world. And maybe it was a little bit of a wake up call from him coming from Penn State, just kind of like we saw Chris Ash coming from Ohio State, where you're like,
Yeah,
this is the way to do things. This is how you do it. But it's like, no, that's how you do it if you're littered with five-star athletes, especially across your defense. If you don't have that, you have to change things up a little bit. And it seems like he gets that. And then the
Yeah.
other thing that came from his press conference, without talking about the entire thing, was he mentioned that they need to get some younger players reps, which indicates to me that he knows they're not that good as a
Hmm.
team and that he needs to start thinking about the future. So in my mind, from when I listened to it, he was basically saying Rutgers is a better team than us right now. Yet he seemed to also understand, like, if we can stay close and we can hang in the game, and like we might be able to pull it out at the end. I mean, they played in the close game last week. Rutgers hasn't played in the close game yet. Like, I think he knows they probably only have, in my opinion, a 25% chance of winning this game. But he's going to be ready that if their opportunity comes, Virginia Tech is, going to be in position to take advantage of that.
Yeah, great points. And that does scare me a little bit. And I think that it's not rocket science. Rutgers has to protect the football. They have to win the time of possession battle. Number two nationally right now. And I've said this before, and you kind of touched on it. But yes, if they fall behind, how's Whimsick gonna get punched in the mouth? How's he gonna react to that? I going back to your point about Shiraka. I'm sure he has. They probably Whimsick probably already has a decent idea what they will do if they're behind. I'm sure they've been prepared for it, but it's a matter of how will he actually be able to perform in that moment with the pressure on. You're at home, you're down. It's third quarter, fourth quarter, whatever. I think we don't know that yet about this team, but I think specifically we don't know it yet about Whimsett either.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's one of the things you can practice, and this is a good way coaches try to, prevent their team from getting too big of a head, getting too big of an ego on a winning streak. Is in practice, you can set the situation to be like, okay, we're down 10, the clock's only got 4 minutes, we got to score twice in the last 4 minutes or whatever it is. Defense is kind of in a prevent. Like, these are the plays you got to go with a sense of urgency, and it's a failure if you fail. And sometimes offensive players don't, they're like, whatever. Like, this isn't what's going to happen. But in football, it doesn't work because the defense is going to be celebrating in your face, even though they're just made up by 10 points. But they're going to be like, what, you don't have anything for this? Even if it's
Yeah,
the scout team. Like, I played on scout team. Like, I know those guys are going to have a lot of pride. They're not going to go light on this offense. And you can set some of those situations in practice, even if you haven't had them in a game, of like, okay, you need to operate with a sense of urgency. These are the personnel groupings. This is what we're going to do. So I agree with you. I think they'll be ready for it. It's just, can they execute? Like you said, we don't know. We have to see it happen. We have not seen Gavin Wimsatt, other than a drive against Boston College when he did throw one pass,
hmm
like lead them to a comeback victory. That's all we've seen from him in
well,
that regard.
he did make that. It's crazy to think about, but he did make that one clutch pass on third down when they inserted him against Illinois 2 years ago. Which,
True, true.
if you think about it, was such a wild decision to put him in that situation.
In
And I think
retrospect.
that actually hurt him long term. I think because it actually hurt expectations, or raised expectations to an unfair level. I think.
Right. Well, the other thing it did when you think back on it, like we've talked about, when he has to just see the play, make the play, is when he's at his best. And on
Yes.
that play, he was getting pressure. He had no time to decide, like, do I wait? Do I throw it? What? No. He just had to basically just raw instinct throw that pass. And
Yep.
that's what we've seen him do well. Same thing with that Dremel catch against Northwestern, which we
Yes.
haven't talked about because I haven't been on. That was probably the best play I've seen a Rutgers quarterback make in years. Was
Yeah.
he was had a good outside the pocket. It's fourth down. You can't throw it away. A scramble's probably not going to get you the sticks. He fired it into a guy moving. He's moving. The receiver's moving. The defense is all over the place, and he threw a laser that was, because if he waited any longer or threw it softer, Dremel wouldn't have got his feet in bounds. So like, that play was just ridiculous, and that set the tone for that entire Northwestern game. That, and to his credit, the Cardinal Davis tackle on the fake punt,
hmm
because that was a pretty well executed fake punt, everything but the catch and run. And what do you? I think that was a defensive back, Horde. I think he's a defensive back. He's a good defensive back, but he's a receiver. And Cardinal Davis was just like, you are not getting the sticks, pal. And that could have been a completely different game if now they have a fresh set of downs on the Rutgers side of the field, or it was near the 50, versus, and get their defense some rest. Instead, their defense was right back on the field on a short field. Rutgers kicked a field goal, and even though it was, only a field goal, just the momentum was still in Rutgers' favor. So I would say those are probably the two plays of the season for me, are probably those two, and then the Jackson 60-yard catch from Wimsatt last game. Those would be my plays of the season so far.
Yeah, the Wimsatt scramble with Dremel. I mean, you can't teach that, obviously. So to see his instincts and ability to I've just been impressed by his ability to stay poised. Honestly, much
Right.
more than he was last year. And obviously, that goes to preparation and his confidence level. Shiraka has done wonders there. But also as a team, they've had a lot of younger players step up, and in one-on-one battles, they're winning them. And even obviously he's not a younger player, but Dixon, with those 2 one-on-one tackles at the goal line, you just see, and the Davis one was a great example as well. He didn't panic. They're not
Right.
panicking now. What will it be like in Big Ten play? We don't know yet. But I think the overall kind of confidence and poise and preparedness of this team through 2 games is as good as we've seen it in a long time.
For sure. And that's where, like we're saying, like when we say Virginia Tech is kind of the base of what a Power 5 team should be, that's what we thought Rutgers was for many years, and they weren't. Like
Yeah.
we are at that step and maybe above that at this point. Like we have a competent passing game. Coaches are getting plays in. Personnel groupings are getting in on time. Even with all the guys that are rotating on offense, even though they're rotating the linebackers, we talked about that in the preseason.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to adjust when you're changing who's out there and kind of calling the defense? Toure, who has played some defensive line, to your point,
Yeah.
him, Jennings, and Powell are 3 of the top 8 rated linebackers in the entire Big Ten so far.
Yep.
And you're like, yeah, well, they played against Temple and Northwestern. Yeah, well, who's Ohio State? They played Youngstown State. Like they had plenty of opportunities to kind
Yeah.
of pad their scores and stats. So that's not even a valid argument either. Like the fact that they have basically 3 of the top guys, and then defensive end, same thing. Bailey, Conga, and our friend Aaron Lewis they're all ranked insanely highly as well. So you're getting this
Yeah.
performance, and it's not just us that are seeing it. So
Lewis is 3rd in the Big Ten with nine pressures. So, I've gotten comments like, "Oh, he hasn't done much." It's like he's got the most, 3rd most in the Big Ten and most in the team. And Motoré has been fantastic through 2 games. Like I can't believe how good he looks after missing an entire year.
the thing about that, when I was thinking about it, though, is when you, for example, Sam Brown was injured mid-year last year, so it's
Yeah.
less than 12 months later.
Yeah.
Whereas in the case of Toure, he got injured in the spring a year ago, right? So
Right.
he's basically 18 months roughly
Yeah.
away from his injury. Because a lot of
True.
times what we saw, like even with Aaron Cruikshank with his injury, he was not himself last year until the
Correct.
end of the season. He was
Yeah.
not himself at the beginning of the year. So it takes about 12 months oftentimes to kind of get back with those knee ankle injuries. And so I think that might be why Toure is surprising us, because in our minds, he's only been out for a year, but it's really a year and a half. And he just was he's a monster, man. He just bull rushes people in the mid, like he's just bull rushing guards
Yeah.
that he's giving up 100 pounds to. And it's just insane to watch what he's been able to do. Now, again, will we see this in the extended Big Ten play? We keep saying Big Ten play, but they did play Northwestern, who is a Big
Yes.
Ten team. So,
Yes.
like,
True.
I mean, they have, let's say, Big Ten quality talent at offensive line. Now, maybe some of those guys are not quite, what they will be in the future. But, when you look at Indiana, Michigan State, their offensive lines are not elite either. Like these are going to be similar type tests that we see. So I know we've just kind of gotten a sidetrack, but the defense, I mean, Dixon, we're worried about his speed, not been an issue. Now, if he gets banged up a little bit and he's a hair slower, is he still going to be as effective? I don't know. Loyal's coverage has been just as good despite the added weight. That's been good. Igbinosun, in a reduced snap load a little bit, has been playing very well also. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got great 6 guys who are contributing on that backside that if you were to face maybe an injury here or there, or, God forbid, a targeting call causes someone to get suspended for a game, like they should be able to weather the storm there, on the defensive side of the ball. So I really think that if Virginia Tech just tries to play it straight up, they're not going to get much. They're going to have to do, whether it be trick plays, misdirections, they're going to have to do something to try to get Rutgers off a defense. Again, this is now a slam dunk that Rutgers wins, but if they
Of course
play
not.
well, they win.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And that's why I'm excited to see them play another Power 5 team. they haven't played two Power Five teams in the first three games, and I don't know when, not a long time.
Well, since 2020 when they had only the
Well,
conference play.
true, true. Yes,
Right.
in a traditional season though, they haven't. So I'm excited to see that. And I do think Virginia Tech, they'd be a bottom half Big Ten team, of course, but I think they're better than Northwestern. So I think it's a big test. Bring this full circle. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for everything. And we rambled a little bit at the end, but that's just fun. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening and watching this. But to bring it full circle, number 33 for the Hokies. This is for the kids listening. Bashul Tutin. So I had to
Yeah,
get that out
Tootin.
there. I
Yeah,
said it
he's
to my
from New
daughter yesterday.
Jersey. Yeah, he's from New Jersey. He played at a lower level, dominated, absolutely dominated. I think was it
North
North
Carolina
Carolina A and
A&T.
T?
Yeah.
Yeah. So dominated that, and then it's good to see a guy like that get an opportunity. I mean, the thing is, Rutgers has such a deep running back room. That's why maybe they wouldn't have taken him, even though he's from New Jersey. But like in another situation, I would have loved to if they could have brought him on board. But right
Yeah.
now, their running backs are playing great too, so it's hard to argue that.
He's from Paulsboro, and yeah, that was an old Ted Lasso joke about Tootin. So had to get that out there. I said it to my daughter, but she didn't laugh. So maybe on Saturday. But thank you for everything once again. Thank you for listening to this preview for Rutgers Virginia Tech here at the Scarlet Faithful, and we'll talk to you soon.